Virtual care took off during the pandemic, and many people are eager for virtual care to succeed. But what makes for high-quality virtual care? I'm Andy Reynolds. Today on Quality Matters, a look at a new NCQA accreditation program that distinguishes high-performing virtual care organizations. We'll hear from one of the architects of Virtual Care Accreditation and from the VP of a remote services provider that tested NCQA standards in a pilot project. They are, respectively, Claire Mendelson of NCQA and Misty Milby of Everlywell. Misty, let's start with you. Please tell us about yourself, your company, and your work in virtual care.
Thanks for having me. I'm Misty Milby. I'm Vice President of Clinical Business Development at Everlywell. Everlywell is an at-home lab diagnostic company with wraparound virtual care services. This month, we will ship out about 1 million kits for at-home lab diagnostics in just our MA population. I am in Kentucky, and I support a spectrum of partners in providing at-home diagnostics through lab services and then wrapping that service around with virtual care.
And Claire, tell us who you are and what you do, please.
My name is Claire Mendelson. I'm a product manager at NCQA. I led our team through pilot development and launch of our virtual primary care and virtual urgent care accreditation programs.
I have a basic question to start, which is, what are we talking about when we say virtual care? We hear terms like telemedicine, asynchronous care, virtual care. Misty, these terms, are they all the same, or should I be hearing differences between them?
Great question, and it's something folks ask a lot. Telehealth to me means delivering health care remotely using technology so that can encompass all of some of what you just mentioned, things like video visits, phone calls, async messaging through a secure platform, emailing, remote monitoring devices, as well as at-home lab diagnostic tests. So it lets patients connect with clinicians without having to be in the same physical location. So Andy, all of these modalities, it does all sync back into the definition of telehealth, but we may use different types of technology to tap into that telehealth appointment.
We should touch on what the rules are for these services. We are speaking in late October. The federal government is shut down, and I understand that telehealth rules Medicare put into place during the pandemic, which liberalized or opened access to telehealth, that's off for now. It's effectively 2019 again. Seniors who had their telehealth paid for by Medicare, they're not getting that right now, correct?
They are not getting that unless a vendor platform or some sort of telehealth service has a special contract with a provider to provide these services. They are not currently getting these services.
And regardless of when the federal government reopens, what should we expect long-term with regard to Medicare coverage of telehealth?
We need permanent bipartisan actions to keep telehealth accessible. Virtual care needs to be treated as part of the care continuum and not as a special category that expires every budget cycle. The pandemic allowed seniors and really all age groups to become more comfortable with having virtual care visits. That was an incredible way to bring services and to bring care to those who otherwise may not be able to access that. So we need permanent bipartisan action to keep telehealth accessible for everyone, but especially seniors.
Claire, is there something you'd like to add?
When we talk about meeting patients where they are, there's no better example than virtually enabled care. Virtual care is here to stay. This modality of care delivery is not going away. And so echoing Misty's call for action, this is how patients want to receive care. Of course, it's coupled with in-person care. And so this modality is here to stay, and we really need policy change in order to support that and in order to appropriately and adequately support patients.
Misty, you presented on virtual care topics at NCQA's Health Innovation Summit in October. I caught part of your talk and was intrigued by something you said. You said that virtual care at your company, quote, started as a dream of mine about 5 years ago. How do we pivot into a care solution for a member who's on the phone? Say more about that, please. What was your dream for virtual care?
I just got cold chills literally when you said that. So let me tell you how this came about. Within Everlywell, we have a direct-to-consumer platform. Some of our most vulnerable populations that live within the payer space, especially our CMS patients, about 5 years ago, knowing that when we delivered care results, diagnostic lab results to patients, it was my gut feeling that this could be so successful if we rolled this into our payer space, ensuring that everyone has access to a provider. So when the NCQA Virtual Care Pilot Accreditation came about, the timing was right. It was perfect for us as we decided we did want to implement virtual care into our payer space. Because one thing that you have to do when you go and introduce a product in the payer space is you have to make sure that there is quality standards behind it, that there are guidelines to follow, and that it looks and feels the same for each member. And that is something that was so needed in this space.
You mentioned both NCQA Virtual Care Accreditation and the pilot project Everlywell was part of. I'd like your perspective on both those topics. But first, Claire, since you're an architect of both Virtual Care Accreditation and the pilot project, let's hear from you. What's the big idea behind Virtual Care Accreditation?
When we talk about meeting patients where they are, there's no better example than virtually enabled care. So ensuring that care is as high quality as care delivered in person is of utmost importance. The market wants it, patients want it, and NCQA is here to ensure quality within that type of care, ensuring patients have what they need in order to be healthy and happy.
Is there another problem that Virtual Care Accreditation is trying to solve?
A huge goal is to reduce fragmentation. Virtual care creates this promise for more seamless and accessible care delivery. And virtual care really fulfills a lot of those promises, but also has the potential to negatively impact the system through fragmentation. So our set of standards is focused on aligning organizations to make sure fragmentation doesn't happen, that patients don't fall through the cracks. We're not trying to create a different standard for primary care. We're not trying to create a different standard for urgent care. We're trying to make sure that that quality of care is up to standard, and using those nuances and elements of virtual care, assess and create a high quality environment.
And what can you tell me about how you piloted Virtual Care Accreditation with companies like Everlywell?
We piloted this set of standards with 18 different organizations across the spectrum of care delivery. So we had small organizations that started as brick and mortar and created hybrid capabilities within COVID. We had virtual first organizations like Everly. We had FQHCs, and we had a couple health plans, and we had health systems. We met with these organizations individually and collectively on each of the standards. I'll save you the time of doing the math. It was over 100 hours of meetings with our wonderful pilot participants. Everlywell did a great job, and they're one member from our initial cohort.
Virtual Care Accreditation has 5 standards areas. I'll list them briefly, and then I'd like to hear about each one. Claire, I'd like you to tell us about NCQA's intent behind each standard. And Misty, I'm curious to hear from you how each standard landed with you in the real world as part of the pilot project. The 5 standards areas are: first, quality and patient safety; second, care coordination; third, equitable access; fourth, patient and clinician experience; fifth, and finally, data sharing and exchange. Let's go through each one of those areas, please. The first standards area is quality and patient safety. I have to say, that sounds like the whole enchilada. Isn't everything about quality and patient safety? Claire, there's a lot there, isn't there?
There's a ton there. And you're right. Quality and patient safety is a lot of what we're evaluating. We're assessing whether the organization has the quality improvement infrastructure to ensure the high quality and safe delivery of care through virtual modalities. We're also looking at measures, and that the organization measures outcomes to improve the services that it provides.
Misty, what has the standards area called quality and patient safety meant to you in the real world as your organization has gone through this pilot?
The standards NCQA set forward helps make sure that virtual programs have the same rigor as traditional care. And it's a process for continuous quality improvement overall. This area of standards for us ensure virtual care meets the same clinical, ethical, and safety standards as in-person care. As we learn more in virtual care, I'm sure there will be updates once we are able to collect enough data.
Thank you. Why don't we move on to the second of 5 standards areas, care coordination. Claire, what did you and your team of architects intend with the care coordination standards?
We're looking at referral agreements and processes. We're looking at closed loop referral systems. We're looking at supporting materials and two-way communications and the assessment of the appropriate modality of care. Is the organization looking to see whether this is a good modality for someone? What does the technological assistance look like? So the intent of this section of standards is to ensure that the organization has processes to account for patients across the continuum of care delivery and to facilitate informed visits.
Misty, what has that standard meant to you?
As a clinician, I can tell you that handoff is everything. A great virtual encounter means nothing if the patient falls through the cracks afterwards or gets on this continuous referral highway and is never able to get off of it. So NCQA really ensured for us that virtual providers have defined workflows for referrals. We had to make sure that this was really buttoned up, as we didn't want anybody to get stuck on that referral loop or fall through the cracks. We wanted to make sure that the patients experience continuous care versus fragmented care. And it's really about making sure virtual care doesn't create silos, but that it strengthens that bridge between virtual care and in-person care.
Why don't we move on to the third of 5 standards area, which is called equitable access. That sounds self-explanatory, but Claire, I have a feeling there's a lot in there.
Yeah, it's kind of a theme. There is quite a lot to it. When we're looking at equitable access, the intent is to ensure that the organization uses patient data to assess the existence of disparities and focus their quality improvement efforts towards improving culturally and linguistically appropriate services, in addition to decreasing healthcare disparities. So, short answer is we're looking for organizations to identify their disparities, which every organization has, and to make moves towards closing those gaps.
And Misty, on this point of equitable access, I was intrigued by something you mentioned in your presentation at the Health Innovation Summit. You said equity can mean so many different things to so many people. What do you mean there?
When we think about building a model around equity, don't think of it as an afterthought or something that you can just bolt in later to your program. You really want to plug this in all along. Some folks will want to text. Some folks will want to email. Some will want to have a video visit. Some may want to have a phone visit. That's when we start making things equitable. And we don't have to think about things like their zip codes, regardless of where they live, regardless of their income, their language. We can support them based on those preferences that may otherwise drive people away because they don't think that those are going to be provided for them. So we like to think of equity, not just who logs in, but who still can't, and then fix that. Maybe they're not logging in because we don't have a provider that speaks their native language, or they don't feel like we have a provider that is relevant to their culture. Those are the things we want to measure. We want to be able to fix that. And that, at the end of the day, in my opinion, is equity.
Thank you. Why don't we move on to the fourth of the 5 standards areas, patient and clinician experience. That sounds straightforward, but Claire, is there more going on here than meets the eye?
This was actually a new area for NCQA. In the past, NCQA has emphasized evaluation of the patient experience, but this is the first time that we're talking about the evaluation of clinician experience too. Virtual primary care and virtual urgent care are 2 areas where we see provider burnout in a really significant way. In working with our 18 pilot organizations, we heard all the time organizations were working to make sure that they are reducing burnout. There's a question, will virtual care be able to remove burden from clinicians? We realized that this was something that NCQA could help organizations address. So we stood up clinician experience standards, ensuring organizations were putting both clinicians and patients first, making sure that organizations have a handle on what is making something a positive experience for a clinician. They have adequate wait time between patients. Their panels aren't too high. They have the support they need to deliver the care through the modality. It was an important move for NCQA because where we're seeing the impacts of provider burnout. We have a shortage in terms of access, but we're seeing virtual care could be a solution for the millions of Americans that are in primary care deserts. We're also seeing virtual care doesn't always bridge that gap because there's still burnout to be addressed. So it was a critical move for the quality of virtual care and something big that we learned from our pilot organizations.
Well, Misty, what did that standard patient and clinician experience mean to you?
Virtual care will only work when it's intuitive for the patient and sustainable for the clinicians, no matter how good the tech is. If the patient side or the clinician side of completing this visit is too complicated, it's just not going to work. And so we really wanted to help clinicians spend more time caring and not clicking. We wanted to reduce burden. We wanted to reduce burnout. The ease of use matters for both sides, the patient, but also the provider. We always reached out to our providers for feedback in our virtual care space as we went through NCQA's accreditation. Now we do this more often. You said earlier, Claire, a good example is ensuring they have enough time between patients for bowel breaks or to just get up and walk around, or making sure they have time to grab a snack, whatever that looks like. We built that buffer in of time based on feedback from our providers.
We're at standard area number 5, data sharing and exchange. Claire, what is that all about?
The intent of this set of standards is that the organization has processes for the exchange and use of data and informs patients of its processes. As part of the eligibility criteria for the program, the organization must comply with HIPAA and use a HIPAA-compliant platform to deliver virtual care.
And Misty, that's the intent. What has that meant in the real world, or how has that been to work with?
I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, and that is handoff is everything, and your data should go with it. Data should follow the patient and not the platform. That's still something we struggle with in healthcare, this lack of information going into HIEs, for example. If we think about data as a whole, interoperability is the backbone of trust. Patients shouldn't have to start from zero every time they switch providers or a setting like virtual care to in-person care, or a virtual care visit with our platform and then following up with their primary care physician on the other side of that. So we really wanted to make sure that we provided that wraparound service, which is only fair to the patient as well as the PCP. I think NCQA really pushes organizations to ensure information moves seamlessly, securely, and in a way that drives continuous improvement.
Misty, what surprised you about the virtual care pilot, good or bad?
What surprised me in a good way was the time NCQA put into this virtual care pilot in ensuring each standard was buttoned up in the best interest of the patient. But also, I would say through the pilot, taking everyone's feedback. There was days we would meet on a specific standard, and I thought, oh, we are absolutely doing this the best way. I know we are. And then I hear someone else say something during these calls, and I'm like, wow, that is the way to do it. So it was nice to have that real-time feedback and for NCQA to bring everybody together in a pilot setting, because you really are getting to create and update these standards with your feedback in real time. And it was nice to see the leaders, Claire and others at NCQA, take that feedback. It was a collaborative venture through both NCQA as well as the 18 pilot participants to build the foundation of a quality accreditation program. This has been so needed for so long. I've been in virtual care for almost 6 years now, and this was something that it was time. It was time.
I think that's a good place to end. NCQA Virtual Care Accreditation is available for virtual primary care and virtual urgent care organizations. We'll link to information about those services in the show notes. Misty Milby of Everlywell, Claire Mendelson of NCQA, thank you for joining us on Quality Matters. It's been fun to talk to you.
Yes, thanks for having me. And Claire, this has been a wonderful program for us, a wonderful accreditation. Our payers are loving it, and we are hoping to touch hundreds of thousands of lives.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to work with Everlywell. So Thank you for your partnership. We've learned so much from one another.
Yes, we have. Thank you. And thank you, Andy, for inviting me.
It's been great to chat. So I appreciate your time and your thoughtful questions.
Thank you for listening to Quality Matters. You can always learn more at ncqa.org, and be sure to subscribe to Quality Matters wherever you get your podcasts.